Hi friends, welcome back. So what is going on with the Trump trade? What would be up in the markets? What would be down in the markets if Trump were to win the presidency? He's currently favored in the polls, and this has sort of been the talk on Wall Street. I'm going to show you some things that UBS are saying, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs. So let's just jump right in. And first, if you've been following the markets today, a lot of the big tech was down, and in fact, there was a global IT outage. I just did a video on that, and someone wrote a comment I thought was kind of funny. They said they work in a mutual fund, and I guess nothing's working there. However, they can get paid, so they can clock in, and that's about it. So as long as you guys get paid, let the world melt down, no problem, right? The thing is that's kind of crazy though is that not only do we have this global IT meltdown, we're having a political meltdown in the Democrat Party. Every day I tune into this. So we have the Trump trade that's sort of been the headlines. The other one we have is Biden running or not? And I was saying every time I tune into this thing, is that there's always more Democrats that are saying, hey, you got to get out. He has yet to make an announcement. And the best analogy is essentially he's the quarterback. It's the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter. He looks pretty tired. He's got a broken leg. It says, time to get out, guy. But he doesn't want to quit. And, he's had a good game so far. But, you're starting to lose. And essentially, do we go with the backup quarterback with no experience? So I keep saying with Kamala, she's got to pull the rabbit out of the hat. I saw her in the primaries against other Democrats. And I just thought she was really poor in the debates. And in fact, the Biden camp and the Harris camp tend to not talk that much. They didn't get along that well, and that was during the Biden presidency. So, this is the challenge, right? Because if you're the Democrats, you're like, well, I definitely don't want to vote for Trump, and then you got to find someone who really energizes the party and you can solidify around. So I made a couple of videos on this, but I just want to mention she appears to be the favorite right now. The only one that could theoretically really galvanize, people get really excited would be Michelle. This is something like every time I bring it up with my wife, she goes, oh, is she running? Is she running? is there news on that? And it's not just my wife. I know there are many people around the country and the world that are interested in this. And I just say the same thing all the time. You can't tell me if you found out that Michelle was picked and there was going to be a Donald Trump and Michelle Obama debate. You can't tell me you wouldn't watch it. I totally would watch that. So. Whether or not she'd be a good president, that's a whole other issue. But I'm just saying, in terms of TV ratings, definitely be a watchable event. The big trade, though, in the Trump trade that I would or I've been watching is the dollar. The dollar keeps going up. So this is what is actually went down a little bit. Well, down in terms of the Japanese yen, it was like 12% year to date, and now it's like 11.57 or something like that. I can't remember. Or actually, no, I correct myself here. The past year, 12.99, and then year to date, 11.57. But regardless, the dollar has been strong. Now, to the actual Trump trade, this is actually an interesting chart by Goldman Sachs, and sort of the theme of it is deregulation under Trump. Okay, so initially you're looking at maybe real estate will benefit, energy, financials, industrial materials, etc. So you guys can see this here. The big loser will be like your renewables, utilities, consumer discretionary, consumer services. You're also looking at tariffs under Trump. So again, I'll leave this up on the screen so you guys can see this stuff as well. And this one was an interesting one. This chart here is kind of a funky one, and I'll read it. It says, estimated impact of regulatory intensity on equity price of company with the highest regulatory intensity versus lowest regulatory intensity, meaning that how important are regulations to said industry. So I think, like, for example, food products regulations matter quite a bit, and then maybe like leisure and entertainment, regulations don't really matter that much. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to look at. And actually, the food one's an interesting one. I made a video, a couple days ago mentioning that. And for Americans may not know this, it happens. And the example I used was Britain, but it's more than just Britain or / UK. They will import meat from the USA, and because the quality of the meat, just quality, is not that good because regulations are different in the USA. You actually have people protesting in the UK, say don't make any deals with the USA. Please don't send us USA meat. I can tell you here in Korea, we have meat from the USA, meat from Korea, and then meat from Australia. The Korean meat tends to be the best, but it's also triple in price. So you got to take that in consideration. And this is just something it's just a reality. Like, it's always something that a consumer has to balance of cost to quality, right? You always have to balance that. And then someone else in the community wrote that New Zealand meat is good. I don't think we can get that here in Korea, so no comment on that. And I'd like to hear from Canadians any your thoughts on this stuff, because I'm assuming Canadians must import U.S. meat. USA does import, export. Sorry. Well, USA exports meat around the world, and then if you're a foreign country, you import in products. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. That the food regulation one is a big one. Remember, Donald Trump is about deregulation and the party. So let's read what Goldman has to say here. It says, a deregulation agenda is top of the mind under Trump's leadership. It's coming from Goldman. And his team reviewed his previous administration policy anticipation and what to expect. They found a reduction of rules for vehicle fuel efficiency standards. So that's one thing. Environmental permits, financial regulations, and internet providers. So actually, we've talked about the banking stuff before. Yes, chances are, quote, good for the banks, and depends how you want to define good. I think about the financial meltdown where you just give loans to everyone, for the overall system, maybe not so great, but for a short time, maybe good. But yes, the other big ones that you want to look at is like, how much deposits do banks have to have on reserve, and how much money can they lend out, etc. Internet provider was an interesting one. It just wasn't on my mind. It is an issue, and I think it's actually a really important issue. So if you guys watch my channel, you'll know my particular feeling on this stuff. I'm all for regulation and stopping monopolies, this kind of stuff. That's just my opinion. So I'm with Lena Khan and FTC. I'm a big fan of Lena. So, I think this is an interesting one because, could theoretically, if you're going to deregulate, internet more in USA, are your rates going to go up even more because they can just charge you whatever the heck they want? Can they buy out, can the bigger internet providers buy out the smaller ones and screw competition, that kind of stuff? We'll see. I thought that was an interesting one. And then it used to be an issue for a while. I can't remember what they call it. You guys can remind me of. I just sometimes slip my mind. The idea though is, I'll give you is it net freedom is how we refer to this thing. But the basic gist was that, let's say I'm Verizon or whatever provider, and then I will make certain websites load faster and slow down other websites, right? So I give preference to whatever website I want, and it's not just like internet provider. It could also be your phone thing. So you have, say for example, you're on AT&T or you're on T-Mobile, and they could be like, hey, for T-Mobile, we're gonna make, if you stream through Netflix, much faster and easier for you. And so then that kind of way that companies could finagle net speeds could preference, say, Netflix over, say, Apple Plus or Amazon Prime or whatever. So is it net neutral net? I can't think of the phrase. Please type in the comments. I just remember. But anyway, it was a big conversation. I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago or something like that in American politics, and it's actually a really important one, and a lot of people don't really understand it that well. And it's complicated stuff, of course. Anytime you deal with internet things, but if you deregulate this space, my opinion, it tends to be not so great for consumers. So obviously, if you're a big company, maybe, and if you're Wall Street, to be fair, maybe you'll make more money on said consumers. But yes, deregulation will be a Trump thing. Also, too, I talked about before in the prior video, Trump will be against electric vehicles, which is ironic because remember Musk has given this guy money, and I remember Trump was calling all this new renewable stuff the green new scam. So moreover, and again, we're talking about the Trump trade. Meanwhile, this is the administration increased restrictions. This is interesting. Increased restrictions on immigration, which we knew, drug prices, and nicotine products. I didn't know about the nicotine one, guys. So for those of you who smoke, because I just don't know. I don't smoke. So for those of you who remember, under Trump administration, did you see your nicotine prices go up? Were there more restrictions? I don't remember that one. So I don't know. I'll trust Goldman on this one, that they're not just making stuff up. This was actually been an interesting one as well, was regarding the drug prices one. So remember, Trump's for deregulation. The fear was when Biden came into office for the pharmaceuticals is that they were going to come in and crack down hard on profits of pharmaceutical companies and regulate more heavily there. The drug company, the whole pharmaceutical thing is a whole mess in USA, because we even have like situations where states or cities or whatever will actually buy their drugs from Canada because it's more easier to get. And I can just tell you guys this from experience here. I live in Korea now, but I've lived various places around the world, and the drug prices are really, really a lot cheaper here. I mean, to give you an idea, you wouldn't believe it. I'll just say you wouldn't believe it. When I first moved, because I used to live in China as well. When I first moved there, and I would go and buy, medicine or whatever, and it'd be like, is this the right price? I'm only paying like $2 for something that would be like, $10 in USA. Like it really is like crazy different. And I don't know what drugs you regularly buy, but you'll know when you see it. It really is quite different. So this is a really tricky issue though, because it is true, and I want to make it clear, it is true that much of the research does come from the USA. So you don't necessarily want to remove incentive for people to do research and stuff. So I just want to be aware that I am aware of the larger issue. But this is again under Trump. The investment bank expects a second Trump term will look the same, but more rollbacks on energy environmental policies, right? So good for energy stocks, do what you like, pollute as much as you want, that kind of stuff. Environmental policies will be rolled back, etc. So the Republicans tend not to care about environmental stuff. Environment stuff is more of a Democrat issue. So then a negative for renewables and positive for traditional forms of energy, right? So drill, baby, drill. That's going to be the thing. They also expect loosening of financial regulations, which could be good for the banks. Moreover, monetary policy is concerned. Leading economist Christopher Baroud believes a Trump administration could pressure the Federal Reserve to be very accommodative on rates, in other words, steeper or sooner cuts. When Trump was president the first time around, he just kept talking about, the stock market is going to be awesome under me, the greatest in all-time history, etc. And any of these kind of things that Trump says, or anything for this kind of thing, I always say, just always be careful what you wish for. I showed you guys a chart before, essentially the greatest president in history. I can't think of the name, but it was in the 1920s, like the Roaring '20s period. But during that period, it was like massive speculation in the stock market. And if you know anything about world history, what happened after the 20s was the Great Depression of the 30s. So just be careful what you wish for if you base your whole presidency on, let's just pump equity prices as high as we possibly can. So just be careful what you wish for. A note from Goldman's European portfolio strategist maintains a scenario in which a blanket 10% tariff on all U.S. imports could apply regardless of where those goods are coming from. And this has actually been something that Trump's been talking about quite a bit, and Biden as well, is we need to protect America, that kind of stuff, put more tariffs on. Trump's going to be even more tariffs than Biden, because he tries to outdo each other. And like, oh, I'm tougher on China. No, I'm tougher on China. So there's 10%, so in all countries, but the really going to be the big tariffs on China. And during Trump's speech, and it was long. It was like, I want to say it was 92 minutes. I watched a little bit, but basically read the summary because I'm not going to sit down 92 minutes of this stuff. But it was seriously the longest in TV history, is what they said for a national convention. But he was talking like 200, 300% kind of tariffs, this kind of things, and go crazy, Mr. Trump. We'll see. Ultimately, though, as you can see here, this would hit the global economy and U.S. consumers who'd pay higher prices for their imported purchases. And I think people who love Mr. Trump, they just think of just one or two issues for them. They don't really think about the bigger picture. They're like, I like Mr. Trump because he supports Christians, that kind of stuff. You may, and so be it. You can vote wherever you like, but you may pay more at your local Walmart for goods coming in from other countries. So just do be aware of that. Also, too, it says here, in 2023, the U.S. imported more than $3.8 trillion in goods, making it the world's largest importer. So this tariff stuff could be massive to the global economy, right? Because we import so much stuff, and if Trump's going to raise tariffs, there you go. He's also, and it's not mentioned in this article, I don't remember, but Trump is also saying, hey, we're going to bring back all the factory jobs around the world and bring it back to the USA. That's what he says. This also says here, Mexico, Canada, and China are its biggest trade partners. I'm referring to the USA. But according to Goldman's report, China, Japan, and Germany are likely to see the most impact because manufacturing makes up a large percent of their GDP. I know we have Germans watching this channel, so for those of you in Germany, please let me know how the news has been portraying the Trump tariff and that kind of stuff. Just like to hear what they're saying on the ground there. European industry is most exposed to U.S. tariffs, right? So if Trump does raise tariffs, across the board, what would be hurt the most are those highest percentage of goods sold to U.S. Okay. According to Goldman strategists, at the top of the list is machinery and equipment, okay, where 29% of the products end up in the USA, followed by pharmaceuticals at 19% and chemicals at 12%. In European equities, Goldman's team recommends taking a long position, so they tell you what they think, taking a long position on names that owned US-based assets and businesses while avoiding European autos and chemicals. So Again, this is sort of pushing for U.S. stocks. That's what Goldman saying under a Trump presidency. The ones that could get hurt, and this is really interesting because it shows that China would get hurt the most. I'm in Korea, so I guess we really go down our equity. So the way they say it is emerging markets were the worst performance, particularly China. Equity turn around tariff announcement days, right? So when Trump's been talking about the tariffs, that's sort of like, yeah, well, let's just say every time I ask him, hey, what's going on in our KOSDAQ? I'd be the Korean stuff, and is down, yes. But the dollar is up. So one of the things that you have to understand, like we're a connected a group here. So things kind of balance out. So say, hey, we're happy dollar's up, and if you have dollar, fantastic, right? You can buy Korean stuff for cheap. But on the reverse, if say you have Korean won and I want to buy American stuff, not so great, right? So this is always the balance you have to face, and also too, if USA says, hey, if you want to send us your products and you want to, if the US is going to import your stuff, we're going to put tariffs on it. Then they'll be like, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to put tariffs back on you. So there, right, and you get in kind of a trade war. So, but these are the big losers, though, as you can see, and you can see Germany, France is on here. But yeah, the Asian stocks and then Taiwan is on there also. We'll keep an eye on that. Making an expectations based on bet on U.S. equities could be tricky, and even the biggest banks don't agree on the best plays, so people have different opinions. In general, though, talking about Goldman here, know that sectors with the highest exposure to political uncertainty, whether positively or negatively, so this is where political stuff could really affect certain industry, include energy, utilities, financials, healthcare, industrials, materials, and telecommunications. So all sorts of things can get affected. That's why we talk about this stuff. Occasionally, someone write in the comments say, "Oh, Chris, don't talk about politics. You're just too stupid. You're too dumb." Guys, I do YouTube because I find it fun and I enjoy hanging out with you guys. And I just try to inform you. And I know some people get insensitive about this stuff, but if you're in the finance space and you're in the business space, etc., you just deal you deal with the cards that you're dealt, right? So regardless of who is present, life goes on, and you just navigate the current environment. So this is the kind of stuff you want to pay attention to. So again, these would be the sectors that have highest political uncertainty. And then it says here, meanwhile, those with exposure are consumer, discretionary staples, tech, and real estate. So the way they say this here, sectors with the highest exposure to political uncertainty, positive or negatively, include energy, utilities, financials, healthcare, industrials, materials, and telecommunications. Meanwhile, those with less exposure are consumer, discretionary, staples, tech, and real estate. So it's interesting. And I'm not sure if the real estate one's interesting or doesn't have anything to do with political uncertainty. I guess there's not going to be any sweeping changes to real estate, or they wouldn't make any big changes to that. I guess it's kind of what they're saying here. Yeah, I think so. Because I was thinking about the real estate one. I always talk about that because if you're talking about inflation, I think real estate is cost of shelter is a massive thing of it. So it's interesting that I guess I'm trying to think if I've heard Biden or Trump mention anything about, hey, let's make homes more affordable, or hey, let's get Wall Street out of real estate. If anyone says anything about this, I talk about it because I think it matters and it should matter to you. But does any politician ever say hey, let's get Wall Street out of real estate? Now I know some do. They do, not just for the Democratic, more representative side. Or you'll talk about how many single family houses should we be building, or versus how many multifamily houses, that kind of stuff. That tends to be more local city. But do presidential candidates talk about this stuff? Maybe not. I'm just thinking about, and you guys can let me know if I'm wrong. If Biden or Trump ever mentioned in this election cycle home affordability. Now I know under other administrations like Clinton he'd always talk about home affordability. That was just one of his things that he would talk about. Now, and this is where it gets dicey, right? So don't necessarily think that everyone needs to buy a home, because if you set up a system where everyone can get a loan really easy, you get into the financial crisis, right? So yes, it's true that Clinton would brag about, hey, everyone's got a home and Americans are all affording homes, etc. It may be good in the short term, but if things change in terms of, let's say if everyone's on variable mortgages and then suddenly interest rates spike, and you got a real problem in your hands. So all these things have a pros and a cons to it. And again, it's just all about trying to figure out what's going on and navigate together. So what else we have here? It says UBS warns that a Trump presidency and Republican Congress could create headwinds for consumer discretionaries if higher tariffs become effective. Yes, so keep talking about the tariff thing, and that's a big one for Trump. So he'll sell it to his fans as protecting America, but ultimately you're going to get hit with higher prices. Believe you me. But I know the people who like Trump, they won't get this far in the video anyway. So let's keep watching or keep reading this thing. UBS also puts renewables in a danger zone, right? So that's something we're talking about. Because the sector will be likely see less government support, so no subsidies for your EVs. Sorry, Mr. Musk. This parallels Goldman's review of Trump's past policies, which cut back on budgets and permits for environmental protections and energy, an expectation of further rollbacks another term. Republican sweep could also bring tax cut extensions. Yes, that's one of the Republican things. Cut taxes everywhere, right? This would benefit industrials, telecom, healthcare, and tech. If this all sounds messy, you don't have to take sides. Morgan Stanley highlights a win-win bet. The defense sector is expected to benefit regardless of who takes office because both parties are motivated to spend money on national security. And I always say this as well. For those of you who watch my channel, I always talk about, say, like a Lockheed Martin and something like that. Defense industry is never going to go out of business in USA. That's just how it is. There's always going to be somewhere to sell weapons to or use weapons ourselves. It just is what it is. So yes, I always say that I just don't think they're ever going to go out of business. Moreover, let's talk about gold. So I don't really talk about gold that much in this channel. It's not my thing, but I know many channels just focus on gold all day, every day. I'm just not into it, but I understand that many people are. It says here, in commodities, UBS likes gold, so UBS likes that, since investors may see it as a hedge against geopolitical risk, inflation, and government deficits. But Morgan Stanley emphasized that gold's post-election return lean heavily on the outcome of a unified government, meaning that one party would control both the presidency and the Congress, which is when the president and majority of Congress are in the same. Oh yeah, I reset. And then they have this really funny chart here, which this is a gold chart for you gold fans out there. This is like if the government is again unified or divided, right? If one party controls both the Congress and the White House, what can you expect? And this is essentially the expected returns going to election and coming out. So, whether or not the gold is exactly going to follow something like this, who knows? but this is certainly something to think about. And also too globally, with the strengthening dollar, the slowing economy, like for example, Chinese consumers aren't buying so much, American consumers aren't buying so much. And then China's the big one though, because there's been a thing. I can't remember the phrase. It was something shame. Was it luxury shame? I think it was a word. I can't remember exactly what the translation was though. But it was that people are just cutting back on their luxury spending, and we saw that with Burberry stock went down, Hugo Boss went down as well. And then there's an article recently was in Bloomberg saying like they aren't buying so many Ferraris. And I want to put this on top of garment industry, where I want to mention this because I think it's maybe going to get brushed under the headlines of everything else, but there's really bad protests right now in Bangladesh. So I worry for the people there. So if you haven't heard about this, it's a really complicated thing. It's centered. The students are protesting job quotas in Bangladesh, and I'll show you this chart. It's kind of a funky one. They got rid of this quota stuff in like 2018, I think it was, and they just renewed it or started up again just like a month ago. And it's got these really weird things. The big one though, I think is what's really ticking people off, is like if you're the children or grandchildren or someone who fought with the current government. I think that's how you understand that one. And it was like a fought for independence, I think is what they say. Yeah, 1971, if like your parents fought for the War of Independence from Pakistan. So if you're a descendant of someone who did, but I think also that will tie you to the current administration, so it seems really partisan, then you'll get better chance of getting a civil job, a civil service job in the government. So it's kind of interesting too. And they said like only 44% of the jobs are based on merit. Has here 10% are for backward districts. I'm assuming that must mean like poor districts. 10% women, 5% minority, and then one I think is disabled people. So they have this really convoluted system there. And these kind of things where people get upset and angry over this stuff is when there's less opportunities, so you're fighting for fewer and fewer good jobs. 12.27% youth unemployment in Bangladesh, but there's been protests among the students saying, get rid of this whole system entirely, and it's turned violent. So I didn't make no jokes about this kind of stuff because I do, care about other people's livelihoods and hope sure everyone is okay. And also just want to say we are all connected. So I think this is the second largest maker of garments and stuff like that in the world. So anyway, please be safe out there. Like to hear your thoughts and anything we talked about with the Trump trade. Always appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.